journey of the 5th edition. Join our various gaming groups as we play the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons. And maybe just hang out and chat about gaming in general. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi, this is Kelly, aka Trixie from Ragnarok and Roll, assigned to Ragnarok Story, and Tilda Wimblewick from D&D Journey of the 5th Edition. First off, I would just like to say thank you to everyone for listening to our varied adventures, as well as for rating us on iTunes and RPGpodcast.com. If you haven't rated us yet, we would greatly appreciate it if you could. And if you're looking for more ways to support our efforts, we are now on Patreon, a great site where you can help us continue making more podcasts, as well as some special surprises for our patrons. If you can, please look us up at www.patreon.com/cppn. Every little bit helps. And again, thank you for listening.
Hey guys, Jim here.
And Kelly.
And for today's topic, I decided to bring up something I've been talking to a lot of people with over the last few weeks, is talk, fight, or run. Not everything's a nail needing to be hammered. Mainly because I've been having a lot of conversations with folks that are like, why does this adventure have something way too strong for my party to fight? Not everything is...
Maybe because you shouldn't fight it.
It's true. I mean, as it goes from a GM story point of view, when you look at a lot of adventures that have been written in novel form, not everything is meant to be fought. Some things are just meant to be a barrier. Like, think Smaug and the Hobbit.
Yeah. I can think of one example that my sister almost caused a party wipe because she decided to take on a adolescent green dragon. And we were what, level 3?
Level like 3 or 4, yeah.
Yeah. And needless to say, practically almost wiped out the party in one fell swoop.
One breath attack with all of the party minus one being right there at one spot.
Exactly. And really shouldn't have let me just shoot my arrow. I'm going to attack.
Now, of course, in her defense, it wasn't her character's background that she wanted to drive off the worm.
It was in her character background.
But she done got everybody almost killed if it wasn't for somebody who took the first option that I have here, which is talk.
Mm-hmm. My rogue begged, pleaded, and bribed the dragon not to kill them.
And there's nothing a green dragon likes better than corrupting people.
Yeah. Especially
when you offered honey buns and the salty elf to make the bribe even better.
Well, I didn't offer the salted elf. He offered himself up.
This is true.
I offered my hard-earned stolen gold. That was really hard for her.
That was.
And I had to agree to work and keep giving the dragon the gold. Now, the salty elf decided to go on this whole create a cult about the dragon, and, I don't know where he was going.
All I know is the dragon appreciated it.
Yes.
Spare their lives and you get 2 valuable minions, a bag full of loot, and promise for more on a regular basis?
Yeah, he made out very well.
You turned your adventuring party into timeshares.
But they lived.
True. So the kind of the point I had here with this topic was, not everything is meant to be run in, kick the door, and kill the monster. I mean, that kind of goes across the boards of whether we're talking Star Wars on Creative Playing Podcast Network, or D&D on D&D Journey of the Fifth Edition, or even Scion. I mean, Scion
Mm-hmm.
was another good one where a lot of the times talking with the baddies can get you more than kicking in the door and trying to kill them.
Or, not trying to fight them yourself, but having somebody else do your dirty work.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's nice to manipulate somebody into fighting somebody else on your behalf.
Oh, yeah. Worked like a charm for Trixie that one time.
I mean, sometimes it's better to point one enemy at another enemy. I mean, a lot of the classic D&D stuff had that, where you could put the faction of kobolds against the faction of goblins, because they already have a rivalry. And as the GM, you kind of show that to the players, and, don't tell, but show that there's a rivalry. Like, have one encounter turn into another where bad guys show up to help your players at the perfect moment, only because they're killing your enemy and going to kill you next.
I did something like that in the Dresden game that we were doing. My changeling pitted the two separate vampire factions against each other. I basically started a war without them even knowing.
Yep, when he set the Black Court vampires against the
Against the
local
white.
Irish mob.
Yeah.
Yep, and that's another good one of sometimes you can accomplish so much more by talking. Of
Yeah.
course, let's be honest, good role playing is even better because, that's talking to your GM and they like that even better.
Yeah, that was that character had fun.
Mm-hmm. And another example I had was just the other day when we were playing World of Warcraft, the Fell Reaver in Outlands.
Oh, God. I remember, I take delight in killing that thing every time I can, because the first time I went to Burning Crusades, when it first came out, and I didn't have speakers set up. So I'm walking around, Dan was playing, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And he was basically, we were doing a Tauren roll to Falcon Watch. And I'm just like, wow, this is really pretty. Look at that sky. All of a sudden I'm dead. Literally, because apparently the Fell River came up right behind me, and 1 minute I'm standing there, the next minute I'm squished. Had no clue because of course I didn't have speakers in.
Yep, I mean that reminds me of EverQuest back when they had in North Row the Sand Giant, which is basically just like the Fell Reaver, that it just wanders random paths, and when someone trains it, it basically will go and kill anyone in its path. It's not meant to be killed. It's meant to be avoided like a force of nature.
Oh no, you can kill it.
Well, as a role player from an RPG point of view, I think the important thing is to make sure that you express as a GM that thing seems immeasurably inconfrontable, like a force of nature, like the Hobbit looking at Smog, You kind of know that this little Hobbit, even if you rolled a natural 20, the dragon would not die. So you need to be kind of clear as a GM to players that this thing is not meant to go down in one shot, and they should probably either use skills, which is kind of my thing, is like, don't use just your roll to attack. Use your skills in an encounter. A lot of times you could totally, like, I'm going to totally give away something I've never told Kelly because it used to be before we got together in gaming. But back in my 3.0 days, when I used to actually get to play, I had a nifty trick with my bard. Whenever I got into a situation where either A, I didn't want the group to fight, and I just wanted to say, screw it, let's go to the next place, or B, I had to get the hell out of there and I needed a quick escape,
This must be that Bard Memdawin.
This would be the Bard Memdawin, my little half-elf bard who was very Taoist and very, very chaotic neutral.
Oh, yeah, my character hated him when he was an NPC in one of our games.
Well, Memdawin would always carry an extra coin purse with 40 to 50 coins, and would often, when going to new towns, find the local paint or ink shop and purchase gold-colored ink. Take 40 to 50 copper coins, paint said copper
Oh.
coins, and put them in the backup purse, or as the cops would call it nowadays, the drop purse. And in a pinch, you could pull off this purse of 40 to 50 copper coins, which we all know it's a week's worth of pay, but it's not much cash. Pull the string and throw this appears to be a pouch full of gold coins on the floor. And
of course, everybody will be scrambling.
Because that way, if it's an intelligent monster I'm fighting and they're there for cash, they're going to see that I just threw cash on the floor. What are you going to do? Grab the cash or run to chase the guy while your friends are grabbing the cash?
I may have to steal that.
There's a reason why until tonight I have never given that one to you, because we all know in the old-timey videos when you see the $10 gold coin, what's the first thing in the old westerns they do when they see a $10 gold coin?
I don't know.
Okay, Kelly, in the pirate movies, when they get gold doubloons, what's the first thing they do?
They spend it.
No, they spend a turn inspecting the coin by biting it to see if it's real gold or not.
Oh, I see what you mean. I'm like, okay.
So if at the very least, they'll be on the ground picking up the cash, and even if they check to see if it's real gold or not by biting it and doing a perception check, you totally are buying yourself at least one round to get away or to talk. Which could totally be the thing you want to do in a tactical situation if the tank in the group isn't in the room, or the healer, because you could then run away and see if the idiots will sucker to follow you.
Yeah, but I don't think they're going to be in too much of a talking mood when you find out that's not real gold and you built them.
Well, think how long it'll take them to figure it out, because if you're lucky, what if they're not that smart? They're intelligent, but not that smart.
That's true. And what you could do if you did it in a crowded area, you'd totally keep people chasing you, at bay.
Mem Darwin has totally used that in chase scenes to basically throw the gold coins behind him. And it's better than caltrops or ball bearings, because if there's a crowd, what are the people going to do when they see the gold coins glittering on the paved road?
They're going to go diving for it.
Instant difficult terrain. Because it's all about you don't have to treat everything like a nail and hammer it with a fight, because I've talked to a few players and GMs over the last month or so, and there is this theme that players think everything you put in front of them is meant to be confronted with violence.
Well, that's true. The whole murdering hobo aspect of it. But one thing that helped me kind of break out of that mentality was specifically picking a character that would have to think more, which is why I created when we did Scion, I did Trixie.
Mm-hmm.
She's not really that fighty. She's,
she's totally her father's daughter.
Yeah, well, she would not admit it. She hates her dad. She's really upset with him. But I specifically am like, okay, I'm going to try something that I don't normally do. And that's when I created her. And I have to stop and think, well, it's not like she can really do a whole lot of damage or that type of thing, but she's got spells and, she would eventually have become the goddess of misdirection. But, yeah, you choosing something that you don't normally play can sometimes, help you move into a different frame of mind.
Yeah, because it's often nice to see players, because I mean, looking back to older, like third edition of D&D, when you had skill points and you had skills of the wazoo to use, which of course they had what, like 14, 20 skills in third, so yeah, and the number perpetually kept growing, so you could easily do like a 35 plus roll because you put your skill points into it.
Hmm.
But that's one thing I do notice in fifth edition, and I am pleasantly surprised in Strixhaven. Reading through the adventure, they have so many examples for GMs to give their players of you can use a skill, here's the DC check of that number.
Mm.
So that way you can be a magic user using sleight of hand with your magic, doing, the proverbial lesser magics, something weaker than a cantrip, but still using your magic and a skill to work with it.
Yeah.
So that way folks are, actually doing skills, which is good to see, adventures reinforcing that it's more than just the climb or the swim skill, it's actually doing more with sleight of hand, because like, let's be honest, sleight of hand has been underutilized in a lot of the adventures in 5th edition.
Yeah, well, I think they kind of they neutered a lot of its potential,
Mm-hmm.
so people don't think of it offhand, but it's there. It's just not as prevalent as it used to be.
Mm-hmm. And of course, like I was talking on our Star Wars game this weekend, when in Star Wars it's simple. You've got an easy, an average, a hard task, so it's 1, 2, or 3 dice, and then 4 difficulty dice if it's impossible. In D&D, we've got the long rolling DC chart, the difficulty, classes or difficulty, challenge.
Hmm.
So for D&D, it's, because remember back when you could just take 10 or take 20?
Uh-huh.
That way you could basically say, I'm spending a week building this chair, so it's going to be a great chair because I'm taking my time. So a lot of times from a meta level as a GM to a player, you got to remind players sometimes that the tiers of difficulty are basically an easy task requires a 5 or better. That's fairly easy. Anyone with any skills and is in it will probably not roll a 1.
Yeah.
Easy difficulty is 10, which is kind of scary. So something you do on a daily basis still requires you to take a 10 or better, which is why 3.5 used to have the take 10 action, where you could just totally say, I take my time and I just do this thing. It's driving your car to the store without any crazy traffic. Then the scary part is for a medium difficulty, it's DC 15. So if
That's
you,
tricky.
you think about it, that's a pretty high number.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, granted, you could, totally do something to take advantage. You could use, a kit to help you. You could, make sure you've got proficiency in it, so you're getting your proficiency bonus as well as your stat bonus. And then if it's a hard task, it's DC 20. And of course, we all know how hard it is to get a 20 or higher. Just ask your GM when a player has an AC of 19.
Yep.
You're constantly hitting them, but then again, that's as intended. Guy decked out with a great AC, great dex, and great armor, and a shield. You're not supposed to be piercing that armor that often.
No, it's designed to be a little more resistant.
Robust.
Yeah.
Until you get that natural 20 and the arrow sticks out the eye slot.
Oh.
And then a very hard task is 25, and nearly impossible is 30. So as a GM, and I do know as a GM, I felt my players' frustrations, honestly be honest with them. If they have any skill or proficiency in a skill, you should be telling them, like, if it comes to picking a lock that seems to be a masterwork lock, it's the best lock ever, you should tell them this is going to be nearly impossible, very hard, or hard. There's
Hmm.
no reason you shouldn't just come out and say it. I know there's that stigma where you don't tell them what the AC is of the monster because then they have a goal, which I play both sides of that argument. I give the number away when you hit the number, but that's just so you can witness how agile and quick and strong the scales are and the bone ridges and all that good stuff.
Well, also with like a like a master lock type of thing. Anybody who's like in the trade, so to speak, is going to have an educated guess looking at something like, oh, well, this is like something uber, it's not you're just run of the mill. You're going to need an actual safe cracker for this, or, you're going to have an educated guess. So when you tell them, yeah, this is going to be nearly impossible, it's not that far-fetched, or I don't think it's breaking any, rules, because this person would theoretically have an educated guess as to the quality of that lock.
Exactly. It comes down to the whole, it's their bread and butter. It's what their character does, You could have a ranger look out on an area and say, in this environment, how difficult will it be for us to find blah, blah, blah? And you could totally just tell them, it seems to be, it's average difficulty of any conditions, because the snow, makes it easier. So it drops the difficulty, or you can even be really generous and say it drops the difficulty and gives you advantage.
Yeah, or by the same token, it's pouring rain out. You're not going to see any tracks.
Tracking the killer on the cobblestone in the dark with the rain, it's going to be a very hard chance for you to catch any trails.
Mm-hmm.
But not impossible.
Exactly. But that tracker's going to know that, okay, yeah, it's possible, but not likely.
Mm-hmm. And totally, if you're doing things on the fly, as a GM, if your players say they're doing something to make it harder, don't forget, like, if your players are running from the law, we'll say in this case, they're running from the sheriff, and they want to make it more difficult, and the ranger says, as a survivalist or as a tracker, can I do something to make it harder for them to track us? Totally be willing to give them ideas and suggestions of, like, say, why don't you run in the small creek instead of on the fresh soft dirt or on the hard rocks?
Or you're dragging a branch behind you to, sift the
to disturb your tracks so it doesn't leave any telltale marks.
Yeah.
And depending on, I'm assuming if the GM's going to roll a random dice behind the wall, because that'll totally make it more interesting for your players, or just caveat that they lose track of you, period. You can totally do the whole use their passive perception as the difficulty test, too. So if, like, somebody's doing a stealth to cover their tracks or a survival to cover their tracks, you can totally say if they do this thing, it upgrades the difficulty from a medium to a hard, and that's way too difficult for this tracker to catch up to them. Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid to just reward your players for good things.
And don't punish a player for asking, hey, can I use this to make this easier, or the type of thing? Because I've been in games where, yeah, the players are going to try and finagle as much as they can. I mean, or rules. I'm not talking rules lawyering, or that type of thing, but trying to get the most advantageous. But it's like they hate it, and it's like
squeeze that juice.
Yeah. So, but your player's just trying to stay alive.
It's their character, and their character is precious to them. I mean, and of course, as a GM, you shouldn't be pushed back if your players do that, because it means that the players are engaged, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if they are squirming to make their characters survive, it means they are interested and they are engaged and they have something and some stakes in the game here, and that is a good thing. Just make sure that they know if you give them the look, that they know that you mean the look,
Yeah. Well, I mean, GM has final say,
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, it is entirely possible to get a nearly impossible roll. I have done it.
Yep, it is possible, and that's why it's nearly impossible and not completely impossible.
Oh no, I literally, I was in this, and the GM said, I'm like, oh, it was near the end of the campaign. I'm like, okay, literally a Hail Mary. I'm like, okay, I'm going to pray to my God to see, and the GM's like, okay, but unless you get a natural 100,
Yep.
not going to happen. I rolled a natural 100 and it was like, it was like, so it's funny because this character was cursed multiple ways. It was terrible. I mean, this character, which started out in its life as a fodder character, that my brother had created, and he had the terrible name. He'd created these two fodder characters named Wimp and Wuss. And so after he'd left, he's like, I was given the character to play, two box basically. And I'm like, well, first of all, I am changing the name. So I did. It was a ranger. So I named him, what did I name? Blackhawk. Something like that. Blackhawk. And, he got cursed with I fixed the name curse, but he got cursed with insanity, basically split personalities. Every once in a while, the GM would roll and a new different character he would like, and he had these frame ones. One was like just completely and utterly depressed. He was called Sad Sack. One thought he was Gage the Great, this ultimate paladin with, +6 holy avenger, and just like, so this character would have to, and then on top of that, it was then cursed with lycanthropy as a were-rat. So the end of the campaign, it was like nearing it and like, to pray to the god. Sure enough, I got that natural 100. The god was nice enough to go, okay, I'm going to cure you of your insanity, but yeah, you're staying a were-rat. I'm like, so close.
You're staying a were-rat, but that's okay because that's the path that I've set before you.
Yep. So, but it is possible. I rolled a natural 100 on my one shining moment. Oh shit, there I was moment.
So, and kind of what did motivate me was I was thumbing through Tasha's Cauldron of Things, and there's a picture, and they talk about it in the back of the book for players of discovering your enemy's motives. And there's this cool little picture with this dwarf with a polearm with a stake hanging off of it, and there's an owlbear. And, and the picture itself is a great descriptor of, oh crap, there's an owlbear. And I've had this happen in many games. I mean, like in our Thursday night game that we don't stream, our barbarian in that group does it all the time. Whenever there's a choice of an animal, is it hungry? Can I throw food at it? And let's be honest, as a GM, when you're random encountering somebody with something, what is the creature's motivation? Because if you can help let the players glean that idea of what their motivation is, that could give them something to do besides just fight it.
Mm-hmm.
Look at during The Walking Dead, pulling a Shane, Sometimes it's better to cut your NPC's leg and let him get eaten so you can escape. There are options to turn around and dying, or fighting.
That's true. Like in the Heroes of the Realm one that we had done, we were facing all of those mercenaries that had basically our target.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of fighting them, we just paid them.
Yeah, I mean,
they're mercenaries. They're doing it for the money.
Their motivation is simply to get wealthy and not work hard. Uh-huh. Boom, instant payout. Okay, here you go. We'll kidnap them again next week. Don't worry.
But right now, okay.
It's no sweat off our nose, and we're getting enough money for the season.
Yep,
And
we're getting paid.
and that's totally one of the things of when it comes to putting things in, how often, I walk up to the city guards. The guards want to frisk me and check me for weapons. So I could either get myself in trouble and try a persuasion check to bribe them to let me come through with my weapons, or I could do an insight check to see if it looks like they're bribable. Just from when I'm standing back in line watching other people go through, my insight check of whether these guys are straight-laced or if they are semi-crooked.
True enough.
Or in case they're, just they're doing their job, as some boldest brass felis come walking by with a charming check, and they're just so cute walking under the barricade. And it's like, I can't stop them because they're so cute.
Like, thank you, hello.
And I could totally see all those felis just cutely walking under the 3-foot barricade, smiling
Because we did.
Because you did.
Hey, you have to wait in line. No, it's fine. Thank you. No, you have to take. It's fine. Thank you.
And when it comes to that too, I mean, so the kind of reason why I came up with the title of what I did was it reminded me back in the days of Might and Magic when it was back out on the Apple II GS, when you played Might and Magic, you were pointing your little forward, back, left, right arrows, and you're walking through a maze, and then a random number generator would create a random encounter, and it would always give you the option of fight, talk, or run. And of course, if you ran like in an RPG setting, like we're used to, you would use, the GM would look at you and say, okay, how are you running? Are you using athletics to just run? Are you using acrobatics to climb on the rooftops? Are you using stealth to dive into the first dark, scary place you can? Are you using history to know the back streets? Or, investigation to know what shops you can run to that these guys won't follow you into? It comes down to even survival. I look for a local indigenous monster that I can run these guys into so I can escape.
Oh, come on. We've all trained people in games where it's like, oh, look, that person, either trained them into the city guards or you train them into somebody else's AoE.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Or the classic, train them to a local beehive.
Ugh. Ow.
You know that pond that has that giant toad in it, get them to get too close to that pond. They're now not your problem anymore.
Or direct them into a really pissed off earth giant.
Not my beach.
It's my beach.
And it's true that, use skills if you want to run, just be prepared to face the consequences like back in those Might and Magic days where you click run and you basically lost the initiative because you were running and you failed. And basically failing to run, that just means you're having an encounter. It doesn't mean anything horribly bad. It just means at this moment, we're retreating semi-strategically.
But it didn't work.
When you kick in that door and you realize the orcs were playing knucklebones right against the door you kicked in. Oops. So, never be afraid to try different things other than just fighting. I mean, granted, that's why a lot of GMs will throw out stuff that is inherently evil. I mean, granted, there's that whole thing with D&D now where no race is inherently evil. And there's always...
I'm sorry. Mind flayers are freaking evil.
They're just trying to find a home for their baby tadpoles.
Oh.
But, that way, when GMs throw certain things out there like your skeleton, your unintelligent undead, those things are meant to be paper targets that you kick in the door and you kill the crap out of. It's pretty self-explanatory what they're doing there. They're going to pursue you. They're going to single-mindedly do their job. But when it comes to like animal intelligent creatures, Why is the creature attacking me? Probably because he's hungry and starving and they've left him locked in this room and on the first thing it sees that it can eat. Or I can use sleight of hand to do an olay and trick it out of the room and then sneak in myself.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I did love in 4th edition, for anyone that's thumbed through the monster manuals for 4th edition, is they always had an entry for each monster that you could do a arcana, a history, or a nature or religion roll. Usually it was a combination of two. So you could totally go up to orcs and roll a, history roll. Or you could roll a nature roll on goblins. And it would give the GM an ability to give you some feedback that your character knows. So never be afraid of using, I know there's the action economy there that players always get hurt when they lose an attack because they're using a skill. But sometimes that can be a better use to do an insight check or an investigation check rather than jumping to conclusions and starting to fight.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all know in a lot of our games, animal handling gets used for a lot of stuff.
Yep.
Or if you're going and you see a murder scene, investigate or medicine to see what was the cause of the death for those
Mm-hmm.
who have a very, very poor perception. Because, investigation is the Sherlock Holmes bit. Medicine is the Mulder bit where she investigates the body,
You mean Scully?
Scully, yeah, that's the one. Mulder would totally be the investigation or the history.
Mm-hmm.
Because he knows all the history. So never be afraid of using more than just the charisma skills, because that's one, charisma skills, they totally explain what they're there for. Deception, intimidation, performance, persuasion. And of course, don't forget the fact that it's up to your GM, but you can totally do the variant skills with different abilities combination. It's just that, like if you're doing Roll20, be prepared to roll a dice and add a number.
Mm-hmm.
You could totally do animal handling with strength instead of wisdom. Or you could do intimidation with strength. You're totally pulling the Arnold bit, flexing your muscles. I am wielding my weapon at you. It is very intimidating.
I'll be back.
If your character's not charismatic, but you want to do persuasion with your subtle, sexy Catwomanness, you could totally do a persuasion or performance with dexterity instead of with charisma.
Mm-hmm. Like finesse weapons can use, you can use either agility or.
Mm-hmm. Dex or strength, you've got the option.
Uh-huh.
Though I don't know what you would do with stealth. I mean, I guess you could do wisdom if you know what's tracking you to basically play on its, preconceptions.
Well, maybe stealth to set not even like survival would set the trap, but
Mm-hmm.
stealth could be to make it easier to fall into.
Give them that last minute push or trip.
Yeah.
I could totally see someone use
hidden better.
charisma with stealth, by the way. If you're in a busy city streets doing the Aladdin thing, and all of a sudden you walk up to the circle of ladies that are like, doing something on the street, shucking shells or whatnot, and you smile at them and throw one of the cloths over your head and join in with them. Instead of using your dex, you used your charisma to blend in with the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
That totally could be like the Assassin's Creed thing where you walk up with the priest and you put your hoodie up. Why? Because the priests like you, so that because you're charismatic, they will let you join in.
Exactly.
Of course, that could also be in Assassin's Creed. It's a good example of using your acrobatics to escape, or doing using stealth. You totally start shit, and then you immediately run and stealth as soon as you get out of sight. Because, of course, with stealth, let's not forget, you must break line of sight for it to work again. That's one of the tricks. And, of course, when it comes to breaking line of sight, there's lots of tricks that you can totally do. Four-way streets, find a basket, Indiana Jones that shit. Just don't pick a basket with snakes.
No, that would be most uncomfortable.
That would totally be when somebody says, I jump into one of the baskets. I'm like, roll stealth. And you roll a natural 1. You jump into the basket. And then you hear the hissing sound.
And hopefully the monkey won't give you away.
Evil monkey. You failed your animal handling skill to convert the monkey to your side. Or you should have ran insight on that monkey. The monkey is selfish and in it for his own. Whoever bribes him with the best dates wins. Oh, I'm sorry.
Bad dates.
Those were bad dates. So that's just a little friendly reminder I want to throw out there for GMs and players is it's more than just kick in the door and fight the monster. Think about talking, fighting, or running in your next encounter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll even throw out jokingly on Monday night when I played in Star Wars, the story had us getting basically railroaded on Nar Shaddaa with the cops. My droid proceeded in, by the way, for context, my droid is the murder droid. He's the long-range killer of the team. So if anyone's going to be killing people, it's usually me. Well, I recently gained full sentience and free will.
Well, congratulations.
And when this person showed up with the law, I came out of the ship to see what was going up. Our Jedi found a dead body outside our ship. The law showed up. I went back on the ship and closed the door. Mainly because sitting next to the lawman was a woman who I allowed to escape because she attacked us earlier, and all I knew was she blew up half my team, so I started killing her murder bots in one shot.
Wow.
And they kept insisting I get off the ship, and I kept saying, no. It was my equivalent of the peaceful protest. And then I just waited for my party to ensue in the violence that was, impending to happen. So the murder bot was not at fault for once.
For once.
For once. Of course, as a backup to that, I also had recently spent points to learn to pilot. So I was totally ready to get the ship ready to go at a moment's notice. I was totally playing Chewie in that scene where in A New Hope, when they're at the spaceport. Had the engines running just in case. So don't always think you have to stand and fight. You have the option to talk your way out. You can fight, which is like the default. If running and talking fails, there's always the fight. And of course, there's always you can break the fight. If your team does the old alpha strike where everybody attacks the same guy and kills them, drop an intimidation afterwards and just say the whole throw down your swords,
Yeah, take out the officer, the leader, and sometimes the rest of the group will, scatter.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the problem with wearing rank and file. Everybody knows who's the guys in charge.
Mm-hmm.
Like the movie The Patriot, kill the officers, and all of a sudden all the enlisted men drop their weapons.
I hated that movie.
Of course, there's also a reason why you don't just massacre everybody, too. Because if you massacre everybody, they're going to pick up their weapons and fight to the end. Pirates have learned that lesson well. If you're just going to kill everyone and burn the ship, we're going to fight to the last man.
Exactly.
However, if we have an option, we'll take the option.
Yep.
So anything else you'd like to throw out there for talk, fight, or run?
Beg, borrow, and steal.
And talking gives you the option to do all three of those.
Uh-huh.
And as a GM, one thing that a lot of players don't realize they can do, and they should do, is the insight skill.
I love doing insight.
Insight skill gives GMs the gift of, like I used to joke with EverQuest. I'll go back to the EverQuest. When you targeted a creature, WoW does kind of the same thing. I can totally tell you if you do an insight check on this guy, oh, this guy's walking the walk and talking the talk. He is a masterful swordsman. You know, the way he has his sword belted, it's like he was born with that scabbard on his side. You know, let your players know when they see something that this guy looks like a fair fight. You know, if you guys, if you do something sneaky, you probably walk away. In EverQuest, they used to have the con scale, where it would basically tell you that you could like one-shot this thing, or, how difficult do you think it would be? Like in WoW terms, the skull would be a red.
Yeah.
I'm just totally Googling really quick the con levels because I love their descriptions. So let's see. So it used to be white, which means it's the exact same level as you. Yellow, a couple levels higher, and red, like more than 4 levels. Somebody put here, great experience or excellent experience. I'm like, that's not what it meant. Because they used to have this really cute quote on the con levels of like, completely deadly, you'll die in one shot,
Yep.
But apparently in EverQuest they took those out. At least in EverQuest 1999. That's interesting.
I never played EverQuest, so, but yeah, World of Warcraft. If it's got the skull or if it's red. And I don't mean the dot, but like the level.
Mm-hmm.
Skull means fuck no. If it's red, it's probably like, close to max. It's probably max level, and or it's 5 to 10 levels higher than you, so it can kill you easily. But skull means, you're gonna need a lot of people. And even then it might not work.
See, I actually found the old difficulty chart. So if it's gray, which means no experience, it looks like a reasonably safe opponent. Otherwise, you could probably win this fight. If it's green, which means just like in WoW, the green, you would probably win this fight. It's not certain though. Light blue it looks kind of dangerous. Dark blue looks kind of risky, but you might win. It appears quite formidable. Then you have white, which is equal to your level. Looks kind of risky. You might win. Or looks like quite a gamble. And if it's yellow, it looks like quite a gamble. Otherwise, looks like he, she, it would wipe the floor with you. And then for a red, what would you like your tombstone to say? And then they have the big bads and raids. It would be this creature would take an army to defeat is usually the message that you would get. And as a GM, use descriptors like that, If there's no reason you can't give your players fair warning, When they see a bunch of scallywags in the alleyway, you can totally tell them these guys don't look like they're that tough. Or these guys look like horrible backstabbing murderers. Because remember, if a party member is wasting their action, they deserve some information if they succeed.
True.
I think that's the one reason why players do so little of skills in play is because they're afraid of getting gypped. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it's the economy. It's important. I mean, if you're, I'm going to save that for when it's going to be, profitable, so to speak.
Like one of my favorites is if you're getting into we're getting mugged in the back alley type of deal, see if you can get next to a guy and sleight of hand a weapon off of him.
That's a good point.
You could totally make the bad guy's dex stat as the difficulty. The more agile he is, the more quickly he is to block your hand. Or you can make his wisdom stat because he's wise to your moves, and perceptive, and he sees you flinch for his sword. You could totally let your player pull the guy's weapon out and stab him with it. A, there's nothing cooler than that, because let's be honest, that's cool. And B, it's him using a skill in a unique and interesting way.
Mm-hmm. And it's very cinematic.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what we're trying to do, is get everybody engaged in the story and add to it. You know, it's like when your GM says, what does it look like when you kill that dude? You know, GMs want you to narrate as well as, do. You know, they want some show in the
But
tell,
don't force players who aren't comfortable doing that. There are players who that would be very, very hard for them. And they might need, the GM would take over and say basically, well, your sword cleaves them in twain, type of thing, rather than, so, especially if you have a really shy player or, a young player, who's just getting their footing and stuff. Some kids can just go off with these amazing descriptions ad nauseum.
Mm-hmm.
Others, it's like pulling teeth. And if you have to pull teeth, don't
Because
push
that's
them.
not enjoyable.
Make them uncomfortable. And so just at that point say, oh, okay, well, this is what I see happening. And then eventually that kid may grow out of it, or then start feeling more comfortable doing it. And it doesn't even have to be a kid. It could be an adult,
Yeah.
Don't force them to give a description if they're not, because, not everybody.
Yeah, there is that caveat that you have to make sure to stay within the comfort zone,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's definitely a good point. So anything else you got to throw out there before we wrap it up for the night?
No, I think you pretty much covered most everything. Maybe one thing is you could use perception to see if there's something that could be used to block or interrupt or, a fight. All of a sudden, oops, oh look, I see these dishes precariously perched. If I just get a little closer, they all go cluttering down, causes all this chaos in the marketplace. It could de-escalate a situation, just by, everybody then gets distracted, or, helps the little old lady pick up her things. Let's hope they're helping the little old lady. But then the little old lady could be a thief. Who knows? Maybe we should roll an insight check.
The little old lady is really the mastermind.
Exactly.
And then she goes up to that barrel full of eels and water and spills it, blocking her escape.
Exactly. So.
But yeah, never be afraid to ask questions and see if you can use skills. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know they've definitely cut down the skill list, but never be afraid of using those skills. They exist for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, many a player has said, can I use nature skill to do this? Why, yes, you can. Historically speaking, has anyone invaded this castle before, and how did they get in? That's a good one. And of course, using Arcana for all kinds of Arcana Cabana reasons. So I'm interested in, what is your favorite skill to use? One last thing to throw out before we wrap it up.
Oh, well, of course it entirely depends on the character. But Bard, of course, performance.
It's amazing what a good performance can do to distract a crowd, or to set the mood, or to tell a story.
Another is medicine. It's like you can use, especially since I play a lot of clerics, or characters that have a backup heal. You know, it's nice to not have to rely on a spell slot. 'Cause especially when you're lower level, I mean, you only have so many. I'm gonna save it for the big guns, if at all possible. But after a fight, roll that medicine check, bump up, do it, and you can get an apothecary, like, certain things that, like, a medicine kit can help you increase that chance, so that you're not necessarily burning, outrageously expensive healing potions, or, spell slots. You can, for smaller things, you can do medicine check.
Yeah, and if you take a talent, you can actually heal with medicine checks, which is nice. Speaking of talents, I've got to show you Tasha's book, because there is a chef talent that you might be interested in for that character concept that you were thinking about.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was thinking, I mean, it could go into even the Feywild type of background as well.
But you can use cooking to buff up your party.
Well, a lot of MMORPGs already do that.
Yep. See, there's a reason why it's a universal concept.
Yep. Well-fed army travels well.
Alrighty, guys. Thank you for listening. And next time you get into an encounter, think about whether you're going to talk, fight, or run. And if you're metagaming with your party, how are you communicating what the tactic's going to be? That's also an important thing to think about. Because you're not going to sit there debating it in front of the bad guy and then you turn around and run. Though that totally would be a Princess Bride moment, but for the bad guys. All of a sudden you drop your sword and run. Or think of how many bad guys will be like, take the fat loot and run.
Bird in the hand, we're two in the bush.
Only Porthos would find a new way to disarm himself. Alrighty, guys. Have a good night, and we'll have some more on Creative Flame Podcast Network, some more panels from Tuscon today, too.
Awesome.
Alright, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you for listening to D&D Journey of the 5th Edition, a member of the Creative Play and Podcast Network. Please follow us on Patreon at patreon.com/CPPN to never miss a show or stream.